Okay, I think we'll get started. So hi everybody, I'm just going to unmute Gemma's microphone as well. So we're here today with Gemma from the STA, and for anybody who hasn't met me before, my name's Christelle and I'm the Country Manager for SolarEdge in the UK. So we're kind of here today just to have a bit of a chat about best selling practices for inverter upgrades. This has been a sort of a growing market in the UK for the last couple of years now as PV systems age and installers look for new ways of maximising their business opportunities. So we're just going to have a bit of a chat through the best ways to go about doing this. So just to sort of have a bit of a housekeeping check at the beginning, we will do questions at the end. So do save up your questions as we go. Feel free to note them down in the chat section there as we go along as well, but we'll answer them all together at the end. So as I said, we're just going to have a bit of a chat through the next hour on sort of the best way to go about selling inverter upgrades from our perspective. So this really is a bit of a best practice approach. I think there are lots of reasons why a homeowner would want to upgrade their system, but it's also important that they make those decisions for the right reasons. So we're going to have a bit of a chat about what those might be. So first of all, we are just going to hand over to Gemma. So just bear with us for a second because I'm just going to switch across for her to present to you. So that just might take a couple of minutes just for that to go through.
Hi everyone, and thanks to Christelle and SolarEdge for having me here today. It's great to be a part of this webinar. Today I thought I'll just set a bit of the wider context that this topic falls within before Christelle dives into the nitty-gritty of the best-selling practice itself. Firstly, my name's Gemma Stanley and I work as a policy analyst for the Solar Trade Association. My policy areas cover rooftop PV, so both domestic and commercial sized solar, residential storage and new build. For those of you who don't know the Solar Trade Association already, we are a trade body that represent both solar and storage. We actually celebrated our 40th birthday last year, which we felt was quite a milestone. But our aim is to provide the industry with policy development, research and lobbying, all enabling as positive a market as possible for solar and storage within the UK. For instance, more recently we have been instrumental in the government announcing the Smart Export Guarantee, which is pitched to be the replacement to the feed-in tariff's export tariff, ensuring that all small-scale solar homes and businesses have a route to market for their surplus electricity that they export back to the grids. In addition to this, we also produce reports, best practice guidance, feed into Ofgem's work streams, and this year, to mark the end of the feed-in tariff, we will be going on a rooftop solar roadshow to 4 UK cities, supporting installers in the transition to a post-subsidy landscape. I think these are happening in May. Amongst all of this, one of our most consistent areas of work has been advocating for high industry standards and against mis-selling. At its most base level, all installer STA members are MCS accredited, and we have strong ties and work closely with consumer codes such as the Renewable Energy Consumer Code, as well as with MCS themselves. We also have a specific webpage dedicated to mis-selling. This includes a blog written by our business development manager, Alexandra Klassen, which talks about identifying signs of mis-selling. There are also links to Rex and Heist's website, which highlight their FAQs and guidance for consumers as well, and also a blog regarding the opportunities and pitfalls of add-on equipment sales. The STA has always called for the continuation of MCS after the feed-in tariff ends to ensure that the consumer protections it has provided so far through its ties to the subsidy continue after the FIT closes. So we were pleased to see a requirement for MCS included within the Smart Export Guarantee proposition put forward by government, though we would have preferred a more holistic approach than this. Finally, installer members of the PV Rooftop Working Group have produced homeowner guidance. This is aimed at informing customers with faulty systems on what to do and what to expect when this happens to their installations, as it was identified that there was a lot of misunderstanding from customers here. It also clarifies what to do when their original installer has gone out of business. We hope to circulate this shortly, so please do keep an eye out for it. So as you can see, there's quite a lot of work and quite a lot of variety of work being done here. This is due largely to there being many aspects to industry standards, best-selling and potential areas for mis-selling. The focus today is more orientated towards marketing and selling, and ensuring that the industry has the highest standards to provide consumer protection in this area at all time. Yet marketing and selling in the solar industry is evolving now that solar isn't a newcomer to the UK market. We now have over 900,000 homes with solar installed, so it's safe to say it's quite a widespread technology. In this graph, for instance, you can see the cumulative installed capacity in the UK since 2010, with domestic's contribution on the bottom in blue. So not only are we moving to a post-subsidy era, we also have in the UK a maturing portfolio of homes with solar on their roofs. Both of these challenges will have an impact on the marketing and selling of solar, and it's up to us as the industry to adapt to this. The change is already noticeable from how the market for maintenance and improvements to existing installations is prevalent, and one that is likely to continue to grow. For instance, one estimate that I heard recently from a major distributor is that 20% of their inverter sales are for replacements instead of for new installations. As such, as this market grows, it is important to bear in mind the negative connotations that this could have on the industry if done poorly. These charts are taken from REC's 2017 annual report, which tracks different technologies log complaints. Here on the left, you can see over half of 2017 complaints are to do with solar. And if you look to the right, the bar labeled CA2 in the graph there, which is marketing and selling complaints category, received 202 complaints last year, which, whilst not able to distinguish the proportion from solar from other technologies, is still a fair share of the complaints, which I'm sure solar contributes to. This is in addition to a fair amount of media coverage this topic has received over the past year. Mis-selling complaints surrounding upgrades or maintenance issues specifically have been reflected in the news and media publications over the past year or so. For instance, in April 2018, the Financial Ombudsman issued warnings to customers over misleading and high-pressure sales techniques used to sell solar in the UK. One of our own members, AES Solar, formed their own helpline after being inundated with calls regarding sales calls offering unnecessary upgrades or maintenance. And this is in tandem to a number of warnings issued by councils over nefarious sales tactics. MCS themselves have also appeared on the BBC radio show You and Yours, which featured a recorded home visit by ESC Services offering an upgrade, claiming it could boost production by 60%. As such, with this part of the market continuing to grow, it is important that, as an industry, we capture this opportunity. Despite the policy uncertainty and the cliff edges government have handed to this industry through their policy making, it has really been a success. It remains the most popular form of renewable generation with the public, costs are substantially down, and it works incredibly well with new and emerging technologies, such as home management systems, EVs, or through providing upgrades. In a post-subsidy world, sales techniques for both new and existing installations must not damage the perception of the industry. The market for maintaining and improving existing installations is a relatively new one, meaning that there is a lack of understanding from consumers about what is possible and what is probable with upgrades. The opportunities this could bring to customers also pose risks through the uncertainty associated with it. So it is important as an industry to act as a safeguard against this uncertainty. We really commend companies who also see the importance in this and place both the perception of the industry and consumer protection as a core concern for their business. So massive thanks to SolarEdge for running this webinar. It's a really important subject. Finally, if you have any questions or would like to get in touch, you can find my contact details here. And thanks for listening.
All right, here we go. Okay, so moving on to talk a little bit more about why homeowners might upgrade. And the sort of, in our view, the best practice way of presenting those to them and helping them understand why this might be the right solution for them. Of course, I work for SolarEdge, so I am a little bit biased in that I think that everybody should have a SolarEdge system on their roof. But we also understand that for somebody who's already got an existing PV system and they've already spent a lot of money on that, that spending additional however many likely to be £1,000 on upgrading the system may not be the right decision for them. Okay. There we go. Okay, so from our perspective, we are a manufacturer that's really committed to the market in the UK. We've been present in the UK, I'd say, since 2010, when SolarEdge first started manufacturing. We have no intention of leaving the UK market anytime soon. So it's really important to us that anything that our products are involved in the market is done so in a way that we're proud of. And so obviously with upgrades being an increasing part of the industry, it's really important to us that those who are offering that are doing so in a way that that we can be proud to be associated with. So we do think there are quite a few reasons that a homeowner specifically might upgrade, and we're going to run through a couple of them. So the first being that they've had an inverter or a system failure. Obviously PV systems that have been installed for a number of years are likely to be coming to the point where maybe the inverter is failing, they're developing some faults. So it's obviously the perfect time for them to start looking at upgrading or replacing some components in the system. They might be interested in expanding functionality of the system. The offerings in the PV market now are certainly very, very different to what they were 5, 6, 7 years ago. So obviously many homeowners, especially those that are slightly more technology focused, are going to be very interested in offering additional features or having additional features included in their system. Enhancing the safety of the system might also be something that's important to them. PV is inherently a safe technology, but there are things that can go wrong, and a homeowner who's experienced a little issue with their system might be a bit more up to speed on that. And of course, increasing revenue is something that many homeowners are going to be looking for as well, especially those on the maybe more lower tariffs. If they can increase their system performance by a few percent, then that can have a really nice impact for them on the bottom line. So how to sell them? So it is really important from our perspective especially, and I think for the homeowner's experience, that inverter upgrades are sold properly. It is definitely something that could be missold. I don't think there's anybody on the line that would disagree with that. It definitely could be missold. But it's also very, very easy in our perspective to sell an upgrade in a way that allows the homeowner to make a very informed decision on what the value for them is going to be. So if we start, first of all, with the possibility that maybe they've had an inverter failure or a system issue. So we think the best way of presenting an upgrade for the system in that case would be to first of all do a complete inspection of the system. So visually check for any physical damage, examine the uptime of the inverter, so see exactly what's going on. In many cases, homeowners are not actively monitoring their system, whether it be because there is no monitoring system at all, or because that's just not something that they're interested in doing. And in some cases, it could be 3 months, maybe even more, that the system's not been working. And the only reason that they've identified a performance issue is because they've taken a fit meter reading. So we definitely recommend checking exactly what's going on with the inverter, and also looking at what the existing inverter warranty is. Obviously, there are many products that have been sold with 5-year warranties, in which case if the inverter has failed, it's out of warranty. But there are also many products in the market that have longer warranties. So, for example, the inverter is 5 years old and it's failed and it has a 10-year warranty, then perhaps upgrading the inverter at that point in time is not the right option for the homeowner. It's becoming increasingly common that homeowners would like to increase the functionality of the system. I know many, many people who choose to upgrade their mobile phone every 2 years because they want some extra features, perhaps choose to upgrade their car every 3 years. Because they want something that's new. And certainly true that the same rule applies to customers that have a solar system. So just because they had their system installed 8, 5, however many years ago, that doesn't mean that they're still happy with the features that system includes. So they may be interested in adding a storage system, maybe adding some smart energy products, or increasing the resolution of the monitoring system. So adding SolarEdge technology to the system allows them to do all of these things. Obviously, they can do things like AC-coupled storage with their existing system, but certainly if they want to incorporate all of those elements together, including with the advanced monitoring, then upgrading the system will allow them to do that. And there are a full range of smart energy products available to homeowners in 2019. So from SolarEdge, we do offer a complete solution. So that includes, obviously, I think you all know us for our optimizer and inverter solution, but we also have the storage range and a full smart energy range, including an immersion controller and smart sockets, and adding EV products in the next couple of months to also allow them to charge the electric vehicles directly from their solar array. There's certainly a lot of benefits for the homeowner of having all of these components come from one manufacturer. They're all designed to work together. It means they can have a single solution for all of those elements of the system. And then all the warranty and the support comes from one location. So if there's a fault, they know that SolarEdge will be able to support them, as opposed to having to choose between 3 or 4 different manufacturers and not know which one to call. And all of that can be controlled from one app. So they can sit anywhere in the world, open their app, and control all of their system remotely in one go. It's certainly becoming a lot more popular to do as we sort of transition to smart homes. There is certainly a right and a wrong way of presenting self-consumption to a customer from our perspective. So we certainly think that it's a good idea to check actually as much as possible if they will benefit from increasing their self-consumption. If, for example, this is a customer that has a relatively small PV array and they have a very large electricity demand, then their self-consumption may already be very high. And adding additional functionality may not offer them any benefit when it comes to their self-consumption. A lot of PV systems won't have advanced monitoring that allows them to do self-consumption. It is possible with SolarEdge to add the energy meter via a control and communication gateway to allow you to monitor the self-consumption of the system, even if there isn't a SolarEdge PV system. If that's something you'd like more information in, then let me know and we can send that to you after the webinar. So the idea of self-consumption is effectively the ability to move elements of demand into a period of the day when solar is generating. That can be done in really 2 ways. The first is by storing excess energy into a battery to allow the battery to be discharged in the evening or the morning when the customer needs the energy. The second is to move the demand from different times of the day. So this is something, for example, that the immersion controller is very good at doing because it can heat the hot water in the middle of the day as opposed to the evening. So we're seeing that here. So you can do that, for example, with one of the smart sockets. It allows you to connect any product in the home. In theory, there are some exceptions, so always recommend to check the specification. Also happy to talk you through exactly what you can and can't do with these devices. So high resolution monitoring is also something that a lot of customers are interested in. For those that have experienced system issues, perhaps the inverter has been offline for 3 months or so, in worst case scenario, then they will have lost a lot of revenue and be very interested in having an expansion of their current monitoring system to allow them to identify faults at an early stage. Could also be important in cases where maybe there's a chimney or the environmental conditions around that PV system have changed since it was installed. It's very, very likely that perhaps a tree has been planted or an aerial has been moved, something like that. And by having an advanced level of monitoring, it allows the customer to understand how much impact that is having for them. So with SolarEdge, I am assuming, of course, that most of you are fairly knowledgeable about our offering. But as you can see here, it does allow you to see the performance of all of the modules individually, allowing you to identify exactly what is going on at the system at any point in time, so the homeowner can really understand, or you as the installer can help them to understand exactly what impact different conditions are having on their PV system. So you can also offer the customer the monitoring during the sales process. We offer both demo sites and public sites, and I'm sure most of you will already have some existing SolarEdge systems, which allow you to give the customer a bit of an idea of how that system will perform for them, and they can understand if that's something that really interests them. We certainly have a number of homeowners in the UK that have chosen SolarEdge because of the monitoring. They're very, very technology focused and really like having the control. So it's possible that this alone might be a reason for a customer to upgrade. We definitely recommend giving the customer a bit of a test drive of the monitoring first, as the demo sites are available for anybody to use, or of course you can use an existing system that you have access to. It allows them to trial different elements of the system and understand exactly what is going on. So I really want to stress the point here that PV systems in general are safe and pose no danger to people or property. We absolutely do not support the use of fear and concern over safety of PV systems being used to sell and upgrade. This is something that made headlines a couple of years ago now, not necessarily linked to SolarEdge. This was also linked to a different product that has been used in upgrades, where the customer was told if they didn't have this device added, then their house would burn down and the fire brigade would let it burn. That is, from our perspective, absolutely not acceptable, and we would certainly investigate and take necessary action against any installer that was found to be using safety as a way to convince the homeowner to upgrade by effectively scaring them into believe their PV system is not safe. That being said, there are system owners in the country that are interested in increasing the safety of their system. It doesn't mean that their existing system is unsafe, but by adding functionality, they can make it safer. Brakes in cars have changed over the years. That doesn't mean a car that was manufactured 20 years ago is unsafe. It's just that a new modern car that has a more advanced braking system is safer. Certainly at this point would suggest explaining the different standards that exist around the world. Other countries do have more advanced DC safety regulations than the UK does. But we stress again that this should not be used as a way to convince homeowners to upgrade because they are scared that their house is going to burn down. If during the inspection of the system a safety issue was identified, then certainly that is appropriate to present that to the customer and say, there is a damaged cable, there is a whatever it might be. But if the system is visually inspected and found to have no fault, then you have to be very careful about how you present that to the customer. So the first element of the enhanced safety with SolarEdge is module level shutdown. So with traditional PV system, as long as the sun is out, the PV cables are energized with high voltages, and there is no way of reducing that voltage up on the roof. With SolarEdge, we have an integrated, what we call safe DC, which means whenever the AC power is off, the voltages across the DC cables are reduced to a safe level. That safe level is 1 volt per optimizer. So for traditional average PV system in the UK has 16 panels, then there would be 16 volts on the roof in the event of a shutdown. And that's there to protect both you as the installer during the installation phase, during the maintenance phase, homeowners, should they be, for example, cleaning the gutters, firefighters, and obviously the property in general. So this is certified to IEC 60947-3, which is a disconnection between the PV inverter and generator, which also means it's not strictly necessary to have a DC isolator with SolarEdge, although you do have to consider things like the wiring regulations and local regulations that suggest an alternative is required. Arc detection is the second element of safety that SolarEdge can offer. So some of the highest safety standards in the world now focus on arc detection. We're seeing it being increasingly requested, especially in commercial PV systems, where insurance companies are looking for ways to identify risk on a large array. And for anybody who isn't familiar with an arc, although I expect most of those online, if you're familiar with working on site, you've probably experienced an arc at one point or another. So arcs occur when connectors, cables in the PV system are damaged or improperly connected, and electric current may pass through the air, causing an electric arc. We generally see these occurring up on connector level, up at the roof, also around DC isolators. In the UK, arc detection is not required by regulation, but as I just mentioned, it is commonly requested by insurance companies on commercial systems. And it is likely that in the next couple of years we will have some form of regulation in Europe, including the UK, requiring arc detection. The USA probably has the most advanced DC safety regulations, in my opinion. They have an arc detection and prevention standard. It is called UL 1699B, and this requires the PV system to detect and interrupt arcs resulting from a failure in the intended continuity of a conductor, connection, module, or other system component in the PV system DC circuits, as you can read there. So it effectively is requiring the system to shut down in the event of an arc occurring, which in theory should prevent the system from moving into a full-blown fire. All of our systems globally have the ability now to have arc detection. It is something that's required to be activated during installation. So during your installation process, you can activate arc detection and then choose whether you want it to be on a manual or an automatic shutdown. If you'd like more information about arc detection and how that works, if it's something you've come across before and you're interested in understanding that in a bit more detail, then let me know and we'll get some more information to you. If you're thinking about your existing SolarEdge installations, and then we can also let you know which can be upgraded to have arc detection. So it's not 100% of existing inverters that are in the market. So we can give you a little bit more information. There's also an application note available on the website. So moving on to increased revenue. So certainly for the customers that had the very, very early feed-in tariff rate, they've probably paid off their system by now. Really quite happy. But as with many things, may be interested in improving and looking to see how they can maximise their existing system to get even more revenue. For customers that maybe have a slightly lower tariff, so slightly more recent installation, and then they may also be interested in increasing their revenue and getting the most out of their asset. So we think the first way in which a customer can achieve an increased revenue with SolarEdge is by inverter efficiency. So inverters have become more efficient over the years. If we look back, it's sort of around 2008, we can see the average efficiency was around 95%. So given that's when PV installations started to gain a little bit more traction in the UK, through to around 2010, we can see that probably that most of the inverters installed in the UK during that time were 95 to 96% efficiency. Inverters have increased in efficiency over the years. Most electronics will increase by efficiency every year, and inverters are included in that. And if we look at the single-phase inverter solution from SolarEdge, which is the single-phase inverter with HD wave technology, this is actually 99% efficient. So for a customer who is removing an inverter that was installed in 2010 and replacing that with a SolarEdge HD wave inverter, it's likely that they will see an improved performance purely due to less heat loss and more efficient inversion process. The second area in which a customer is likely to experience an increased revenue is due to eliminating module mismatch. So like us as humans, we're all slightly different. We will all age slightly differently, and modules are all exactly the same, in that they will all perform at a slightly different point and they will all age at a slightly different rate. So effectively, each one has their own individual maximum power point. In a traditional inverter system, the weakest module will reduce the performance of all of the modules. So if one module is shaded, all of the modules will see a reduction in performance. With SolarEdge, each module will produce its maximum energy, and this is because of the optimizers that are installed behind the modules that are doing power point tracking at module level. If you aren't familiar with the topology of SolarEdge in that much detail and you'd like to understand that a little bit more, then just let us know and we can recap on that for you at the end. This is particularly relevant, I think, for a lot of the older systems in the UK. For those that perhaps have had a change in the conditions, maybe a tree or an aerial has been moved, or certainly for modules that are now, let's say, 8 years old, they will have all aged at different rates, and it's likely that the customer will see more than a couple of percent improvement just due to module mismatch alone. And we will take you through an example of how you can calculate that for them as well. But module mismatch can be caused by more than just those couple of things I just mentioned. So even in a brand new system, you're likely to see module mismatch. If you look at any module data sheets, it will say that there's a module tolerance, probably something of 0 to plus 3%. although we do see wider tolerances from some manufacturers. And that effectively means that in the modules that you're installing, they can have a 3 or maybe more % power difference across the system from day one. That can be caused due to manufacturing tolerance, because silicon is a natural substance and each cell is slightly different, or transportation damage. So although not visible, micro cracks can be caused during transportation damage by pallets sort of bouncing around in the back of a lorry. Different tilt and orientation of the modules will produce a different power point, meaning that they're performing differently. Thermal mismatch, probably less relevant, I think, on a residential system where we have only a small number of modules. But if you have one module that's in a very sunny, sheltered corner of the roof and another module that's slightly more exposed to the wind, that temperature difference across that array can be enough to cause a few % of module mismatch. Shading, which can be things obviously like trees and chimneys, but also from clouds and different factors in the environment. Soiling, of course, which in the UK doesn't tend to be so uniform. So in some countries they have very consistent soiling from things such as sand. In the UK it tends to be more things that our bird friends have left behind. And ultimately what optimizers can do is eliminate these power losses by allowing each module to work individually. So if you have one module that's reduced in performance by 10%, with SolarEdge you'll see only a 10% reduction in that one module as opposed to the whole system. Your modules will also age at different rates, as I briefly mentioned before. Most module manufacturers will guarantee a module performance of around 80% after 25 years, maybe 80% after 20 years. But what will happen in reality is that the aging will perform at a different rate for each module, and it certainly is very unlikely to be uniform. So you might find after 10 years that one module has only reduced in performance by 1%, but one module has reduced in performance by 5%. Now, both of those modules are performing better than the warranty requires, but that is suddenly a 5% or 4% difference in performance across the array. And then that can increase even more over 20 or 25-year lifetime. With SolarEdge, each module will produce that maximum energy, so enabling you to get more energy out of the system by each module not being dragged down by the performance of its neighbour. So if increased revenue is really the driver for the customer, and that's really what they're looking for, then we do recommend to be as specific as possible with this. Obviously, some people will say, oh, you can get up to 25% more energy with SolarEdge. That is not strictly untrue. We have a lot of reports and independent tests that have been done to verify that SolarEdge can increase the performance of a system by 25%. This is in certain conditions and with certain factors coming into play. If a system is south-facing and unshaded and there are no known faults on the system, it's very unlikely that customer will receive a 25% increase in performance. If the system is shaded and there are some other factors that are affecting the performance, perhaps some inherent module faults, then it is likely that they're going to get a much greater increase in performance. But certainly, we recommend try and be as accurate as possible with the customer. By saying you're going to get 10% more energy or 25% more energy, that increases the opportunity for that customer making a decision on something that is perhaps not factually correct. So there's a couple of ways in which a simulation could be presented to the customer. First of all, on the right here, we have a loss diagram from PVSYST. PVSYST now includes module mismatch within the software. So it allows us to say, okay, our modules are 8 years old or 5 years old and run a simulation on what we would expect a system to produce in that year. Now, PVSYST is slightly more expensive software. I wouldn't necessarily expect all residential installers to have this, nor to do one for every residential system. But if this is really an important thing, and this is the driver that the customer is pushing for, then PVSYST is certainly the most accurate way of presenting a yield calculation to that customer. You can also do it using Designer. So using a design software that SolarEdge offers, our online tool, You can enter certain variables about the system. You can also do a self-consumption calculation for that customer and produce a report for them. Now, Designer doesn't currently allow you to enter the age of the modules, but it certainly will give them an indication of what they would expect to produce with SolarEdge should the system be brand new. So we're going to take you through an example of how you could calculate this for a customer. Now, this is quite a simple example, so this system doesn't have any shading, anything like that, but at least it gives you an idea of how you could present something to the customer that's a little bit more accurate than just saying up to 25%, which leaves some room for misinterpretation. So we'd start off by suggesting that you ask the customer for the generation in kilowatt hours for the last 12 months and the installation date of the system, and then also check the efficiency of the current inverter. So the inverter should have a sticker on the side that tells you the model number and the efficiency. Now, for this example, we've made some working assumptions. So the first is that we have an existing inverter that's 95% efficient. Our system is 8 years old. Our customer generated 3,450 kilowatt hours in the last 12 months. I think that's pretty standard of a lot of systems that we see in the UK. This system has no shading. Okay, so to do the calculation, so first of all, we compare the difference in performance of the inverter. So this customer would be upgraded to an inverter with HD wave technology that is 99% efficient. So our improvement in generation due to inverter efficiency is around 4%. That's the easy bit. Module mismatch is slightly more difficult to calculate, but we're going to use some of the assumptions from PVSYST to estimate that module mismatch is 0.8% per year for a system of 8 years old. So that is at the lower end of the range. So that's assuming that there are no inherent module faults or any other issues with the system and that it has degraded at a very low rate. So our extra energy due to our modules working independently could be as much as 6.4%. So overall, this customer might achieve 10.4% more energy, or an extra 360 kilowatt hours per year. Now, just as a reminder, this is in a system that's 8 years old. It is 95% efficient inverter, and there is no shading. If there is shading on the system, then it's slightly more difficult to calculate, but we can certainly help you with that if you have some specific cases in mind and you'd like to understand how to present that to the customer. If there is anything else that you'd like to talk about or you'd like any more information on any of the topics that we've discussed today, obviously we only have a limited time, so can't go into too much detail. Certainly happy to provide any further support or detail on any of the elements that were included. So say either use upgrades@solaredge.com or we'll include our contact details when we send the slides around. All right, thank you very much everybody and have a good day.